Okay, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Rhys Jones. From a personal perspective, he's one of the most passionate professionals in the field of statistical literacy that I have ever encountered. So we are in for a truly engaging and insightful talk. By the way, do not forget also to check Professor Milo Schild's talk about the statistical literacy on our channel. I would like to thank Professor Ritz for accepting our invitation. Without wasting time, I will now hand over to him for his brilliant title talk, Telling Stories with Data, Statistical Literacy.
So hopefully you can still see me. So let's just move that a little bit. Um, okay, so just a little bit about me. So I'll tell you a little bit about me first of all. So I originally trained as a biologist, and then I went into biomedical science and trained as a medical biochemist. I've done some research in cancer biology and immunology, trained as a teacher and worked in colleges, further education colleges. And then I did a doctoral degree in education where I helped to develop a course in statistics and social statistics for young people aged between about 16 and 18. And I evaluated that course over several years and measured young people's attitudes towards statistics. Really interesting research that I really enjoyed working with teachers and young people. I've taught on lots of different courses throughout my career, and I've also worked over in New Zealand in the University of Auckland, where I used to teach thousands of students each year into statistics, and I used to teach thousands of business students as well, from all areas of business and commerce and accounting. And I teach them a lot of the introductory elements to statistics and help them to understand data and the importance of research in collecting data and how they can use stats as a tool to help them better understand their own discipline and better understand business and business principles. I've done a lot of work with student partners in my career and really enjoy working with helping to create curriculum with students and also deliver courses. So I've been asked today to talk to you a little bit about stats literacy and what I think it is. So for me, what it really is telling stories with data and being able to craft a coherent narrative and something that's interesting and will hopefully appeal to people and grip them and get them to listen to you. So it really is the ability to understand and reason with statistics and data. And, you know, telling stories with data, why is it important? It's really important. And we often hear it in all different outlets and different areas. For many of you in business, wanting to go into business, it's going to be really important for a variety of reasons. Off the top of my head, I can think of marketing, trying to sell products, trying to sell a new idea, even down to trying to sell yourself, tell a story about yourself and convey information. It's really important to convey that information and that data. So often it will involve telling a narrative, which can include an account or series of events, which will enable the reader to make connections between them. And hopefully they'll make those connections. Now, data on its own can just be a collection of numbers, but they do require explanation as to what's happening with the data. And this is where statistics comes in. And data stories enable the author to draw the reader's attention to a particular section of the data being presented, and it can also help convey a certain message or set of messages. And using data visuals, visualizations, that could be graphs, they could be dynamics, so the graph could have bits that are moving or flashing, And it can help reveal patterns, interesting patterns to the reader, and it can help them make further connections and help you to make further comparisons. So it will help you better tell that story. And you might get to see some more complex type visuals to help describe the world that we live in, because we do live in a complex world. You might be looking at things in the future if you do get particularly interested in stats and data analysis, things like network analysis, and look at how people in particular, how they interact, but also you might be interested in going down data science route or looking at perhaps AI and how artificial intelligence works. So, we can look at really beautiful visuals like this and how they branch out. I mean, the visual on the left looks a little bit like neurons and neuronal transmission. And we can also look to images like this and this bit comical, but this own graph itself is kind of critiquing itself. And when you start to I'm not sure how far you've got into your course and looking at stats and data, but this graph here, you can see there's error bars just on top of the bars, and often when they overlap, we'll start to question that data, and it might make us think, well, we need to do some further analysis on that data. We might start to question, want to ask more questions around that data. So the art of using descriptive data, which can often help craft a beautiful stories often overlooked. So in your course, you might have come across something called inferential statistics, where you might be using hypothesis testing. But often, just before you get to that, you would probably look at something called descriptive data. So you're looking at means, averages, perhaps standard deviation, and using that data to then perhaps look at visuals and looking at graphs. This type of information is really important, and can often lead to looking at things like frequencies, variables of interest, something like you might be looking at numbers of tattoos, or number of ties, a tie that a person wears, sold, or numbers of shoes sold, or whatever variable of interest you might be looking at. You might also be interested in looking at central values and how spread out the data are. And all this information is really important because it describes and helps you to understand your variable of interest and what's happening to that variable. And the main advantage of using descriptive data is that most people will understand this data and can interpret simple graphs and displays, and it helps you to craft your data narrative, your story, and explain it to people and a wider audience. And explained well, descriptive data can bring the story to life, producing a more compelling point of view or set of conclusions. Now, data can come in many different forms, which means that the data can be presented in a variety of different ways. And being able to identify data and the types of variables that are being dealt with are really important first steps to decide what to do with that data. And especially if you're going to go on to do inferential statistics. So, you might want to do, say, a t-test or a chi-square or an ANOVA test. So you need to decide what types of variables you're working with before you can decide what types of inferential statistics that you're going to choose. And these skills are really important across a range of subjects. So like subjects that you're studying, business, but also psychology, social sciences, humanities, information communications technology, so ICT, data science, and many more. So, these skills are really important. And when you look at the outputs from these types of analysis and being able to communicate like this, it's ubiquitous, and you see these outputs in social media, marketing posts, and in the media more general, in news and forums, everywhere, and they're becoming increasingly used, and people often understand things like percentages, proportions, but they're sometimes not used correctly. So being able to understand them is so important. Now, I have written a few books in this area to help people brush up their understanding. So there's one book there called Essential Math Skills for Exploring Social Data, and there's some examples in there, things like the labour market. There's some business examples as well. So you might want to look at that if you feel like you need some help with some math skills. Um, and what this book helps to do is look at things like percentages, decimal points, proportions, ratios, inequalities, and it helps build your confidence. So they're really important for things like looking at topics around descriptive data, variables, levels of measurement, and it helps provide the foundational skills to be statistically literate. And in the book, there's real data sets that are used across a range of different countries from the USA, New Zealand, UK, Japan, and places like Hong Kong. So you get that feel of, the data's being used and the data is real, which is really important. I feel is really important when carrying out data analysis. So when I was talking earlier about, social media and using descriptive data, you might come across something like this, and particularly, in business and thinking about the business world, creating infographics like this and data visuals are really important because, often people, they'll be on their phones or computers scrolling and they'll look at things like this as snapshots and they'll want the data quite quickly. You can see on Facebook, it says 59% of social media users are on Facebook. So it gives you nuggets, bits of information, bits of data that most people can understand. And being able to tell stories like this in a visual is really important and skills that you should develop because it really provides you with important skills, particularly in the workplace and in your studies. So, the future, as you've probably been told by your professors and you probably know yourselves, is being able to work with things like AI, AI-driven software, but also being able to obviously use computer systems. And a lot of these things are underpinned by statistics and statistical thinking. So it's really important that you're able to tell stories with data, but also be statistically literate. I've also written another book on statistical literacy. So this other book helps build your confidence with stats literacy on how to use stats and stats terms in sentences. It helps you to understand the language of inferential stats. It introduces data stories and it looks at things like media reports, how stats is used in social media, how to read quantitative journals. So journals with quantitative data and data in them. It also looks at how stats is communicated badly, and it has something called sensitive data examples in there. So examples that might be emotionally triggering for some people. And there's over 60 real-world examples and exercises in the book. So lots of useful things in there to keep you busy if you're interested. So, the world is full of interesting things, and I think being statistically literate and looking at stats it means data's everywhere and it makes it really interesting being able to use stats and have these skills. So please stick with it, develop these skills, and really please enjoy your course. And I hope you're having a good time. I know you're all busy people, but I just put this in there just to show, hard work does pay off, like this cat is doing, typing away. And so I do hope you have enjoyed my talk. And thank you very much.